Hello and welcome to this episode from Range Woodworking. Today I'll be making a beautiful wedding guest book from American Cherry, or as most of you know it, Cherry. I've had this board sitting in the stack for a while and haven't really had a project I wanted to use it in until now. Unfortunately, one side is almost entirely sapwood, so I'll have to be smart about my pieces, and there seems to be an invincible price sticker. For those interested, this 22mm board is approximately 1.2 meters long and 150 millimeters wide. It cost me $55. First thing I need to do is resaw this board so that I can cut enough pieces for the whole book from it. Now this process must feature in just about all of my videos, so I won't waste too much time on it. I cut the board in half at the table saw using a feather board, taking multiple passes, raising the blade each time. Now I can have a quick look and play a little bit of air piano whilst trying to do a bit of planning for my board orientation. I'll then send the pieces through the thicknesser until nice and tidy. Using my miter gauge, I set the stop and cut each board into 3 pieces before ripping them to width to give them a nice glue line on either side. I've only just got my jointer, so naturally I'll have to run each edge through to make sure it's a perfect square edge for gluing. Make sure you have a look at my jointer video to see all the fun I had setting it up. Now I'm using polyurethane glue here. To be honest, I don't remember why I decided to use it, but I did. I feel it is rarely seen on YouTube for some reason, but it's a great glue and gives a solid join that won't fall prey to glue creep like some other adhesives will. It also looks like I don't use it often enough either, as I'm having some technical difficulties here. Once glued, I'll use cawls and clamps at the joins to make sure everything stays in line because it won't go through my thicknesser once it's all cured up. And one of my favourite things about the polyurethane glue is the sweet crispy foam you get to scrape away afterwards. Unfortunately, after that comes the sanding, and whilst Cherry is easier sanding than the timbers I'm used to, it is still sanding. And a bit of ultimate frisbee between the sanding discs, and I'll move up through the grits, 80, 120, 180, and that'll do. After the sanding, I trim the panels back to their final dimensions, and then for something a bit unusual and nerve-wracking, I'll trim the white linen cardstock to size at the table saw too. Now this actually worked a great deal better than I expected, and I figured this trimmed edge would always be hidden. To keep the pages all together and in line, I lay a heavy bead of glue on the cut edge and then leave it clamped until that glue is fully cured. I figured it would be like a notepad or something. The next day I was pleasantly surprised to see it actually did work, and I could carefully remove the supporting card that was keeping the paper safe in transit. After cutting the card away with a box cutter, a snap-off knife trims the excess glue, and once I realised I was slashing my way through the protective film, I adjusted my technique and it was all good. Now to hold the whole book together, I'm going to use these brass nut things that I had left over from my white oak hall table build, and I'll link that below too. Now these brass pieces were a bit too big and just looked disproportionate to the guest book, so I chucked them up in the drill press and went to town on them with a good coarse file. After the good coarse file, I used a less coarse file, and then off camera apparently, a fine sandpaper to give it a brushed look. Now I'll mark for the holes for the screws that will hold the entire book together, and head back to the drill press and drill through the whole thing as an entire unit. That is until the nut for the depth stop dropped off unexpectedly. All good though, in general this all went a lot better than I expected. Once that pilot hole was drilled, I used a Forstner bit to recess the brass nuts, and I'll throw a quick final sand on the pieces and break the edges with some hand sanding. For the finish, I'll be using Rubio, nah, just playing. I'm going very traditional with a simple boiled linseed oil. I just rub in a minimal amount, wipe away any excess, and then let it dry. Unfortunately, compared with my usual finishes, that let it dry phase lasts a lot longer than I'm used to.
One eternity later.
Naturally, the next thing to do after all this work is cut the front cover piece up on the table saw. I've done this because I think it'll let the cover open up like normal. There'll be a fixed piece holding everything together, and then a piece that gets lifted up to access the pages that you write on. The fixed piece at the back will act as a guide to show me how much to cut off with this little spacer. And once marked, I'll trim it down and then use that fixed piece again to guide the holes again. If you feel that I've said holes too much in this video, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Holes. I'll use a brad point bit to mark the last two holes, there it is again, I need to drill, and use a menagerie of drill bits at the drill press for these last two holes. I'll give the freshly cut edges a super speed sand before heading over to the laser for a personalised engraving. Now, the customer did ask for privacy regarding this piece, so the more eagle-eyed viewers may notice the subtle pixelation around their names and dates. Off camera, I knocked up this piece of plastic from an old folder in a drawer that I figured I could mutilate and get away with. Using spray-on contact adhesive, I wrapped it in suedette, I don't know what that is, and then drilled holes to suit the setup. I figured that people tended to over-imbibe at weddings and that the front page could need a bit of support. And to be honest, that'll do it. It's time to put the whole thing together and admire the finished product. I should add that I'm going to let the finish fully cure before I'll use some double-sided tape to secure that first page to the cover and hide the purple plastic, but that curing could take a while. Thank you for watching the video. If you've enjoyed it, please consider liking and/or subscribing, and until next time, take it easy. Holes.